On average,
That's
our
crazy.
churches
That's
are
crazy.
averaging just a little less than one person reached per year for evangelism.
That's insane.
I'm standing on the very rock where the Apostle Paul preached to a group of people gathered around. Nobody wants to, just see our decline continue on and on and on. These are the first things we should be praying before we ever get around to give us today our daily bread.
Right.
But if you have a gospel identity, you realize that God can work through suffering and problems.
The future starts right now. The future is now.
Welcome back to the Disciple Standard Podcast. My name is Aaron. I'm a pastor here at Sunlight Community Church, your anchor man for this show. And we've got Mr. Multiply himself back from vacation in Europe, Scott Vander Ploeg. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
You're just coming off of vacation here.
Yeah.
3 weeks in Europe. Tell us a little bit about it. What's the highlights and lowlights there?
Well, we were like a couple days in Paris, and all I can say about that is it was hot there.
Really?
We were in this small little apartment. There was no AC. There was this heat wave that went through. So it was fun, but not that pleasant.
Yeah.
But then we flew to Greece, and we'd been in Greece before. And so I recognized that actually the reason I chose Greece is that it's a way to have a pretty affordable family vacation.
Isn't like whatever the Greece currency, isn't it like inflated like crazy?
Well, it's the euro.
Okay. Oh, it is?
Yeah, they use the euro there.
I could have swore like Greece was super, like it was like
Well,
weird with the currency.
around, so every individual country in Europe has its own economic realities.
Okay.
And so, we rented this house on the beach on the Aegean Sea.
Oh.
And we were there for over a week, and we stayed there very inexpensively. I mean, there would have been nowhere in the United States we could have stayed for a week and spent less money.
Wow.
And we had this 2-story house that was right near the beach. And so one of the reasons that we went to Greece is just I recognize it's a great place to have an affordable family vacation. And things are relatively, they're affordable there,
Yeah, that's awesome.
especially coming from the United States.
Your girl, I was talking to Marissa, and she said that there's definitely a difference between vacationing and traveling. Traveling's a little rougher, like you're going one place to another, but then vacation
Okay.
is like way more relaxing.
She's traveled with me before.
Yeah.
This was a combination. We did some traveling and going around, but we did a lot of just relaxing and enjoying ourselves.
Yeah, that's good.
But where we were staying in Greece, we flew into Thessaloniki, and then we rented a car, and we were staying just like an hour to the east, right on the beach. And the name of the little village we were staying in was called Nea Vrasna. And it's kind of located probably right in between what would have been, in biblical times, Philippi and then Thessalonica.
Oh.
And in Acts chapter 17, it talks about how Paul traveled from Philippi to Thessalonica, and he passed through Amphipolis and Apollonia. And Amphipolis is, it's not really there anymore. There's a village around where it was, but the actual city that Paul probably passed through, that's just in ruins. Philippi is just a set of ruins. But Apollonia was like a 10, 15-minute drive from where we were staying.
Oh, that's cool.
So I ended up going there 3 times, and there really wasn't much to see. Because what's happened over the course of time is just sort of been continuously inhabited. Apparently, in Paul's day, it was a fairly large city. I learned that it was a city that was founded by Philip of Macedon, who was Alexander the Great's father, and was probably larger than Thessalonica at the time. But now there's just a small, I'll call it like a town or village, that sits where this city once was, and is just built over top of whatever ruins there ever were. And so in terms of like ruins, like we went to Philippi, you can literally visit the location of the jail that Paul was held in. in Philippi. There's a ton of ruins. You can go down to the river, the spot where Lydia was baptized. You know, you can kind of see what was there in ancient Philippi.
Yeah.
But in Apollonia, and, you know, it's not like a huge biblical site. It's just mentioned one time in the Bible. There's not a lot to see, except that there's this little rock that's called the Apostles' Step. And tradition holds, like they just had a collective memory in this village that when Paul passed through, he got up on this rock, which was sort of like, they call it the Apostles' Step because this rock was sort of like a natural stage. And then he preached the gospel to everyone who was there.
Did you get on it?
And so I got up on it. And actually, I mean, I don't know, Jake, if you can just do a little search for the Apostles' Step in Apollonia. I mean, I took pictures, but now since it might be difficult to kind of transfer, we're going to just have Jake look it up so that you can see it, Aaron.
Did someone take a picture of you on it? Did you preach?
I think Andrea has a picture of me on it, but I don't have that picture from Andrea.
So I'd be on that thing. Oh, wow.
So, okay. That's the Apostles' Step. And they have a little plaque there that commemorates it now. There's this little stream that kind of was also there. So I found out that the Roman road, as few as 20 years ago, you could see remnants of the Roman road that Paul would have traveled on.
Oh, that's cool.
But now, in the last 20 years, it's been every vestige of it has been completely destroyed by development or whatever.
Yeah.
But it used to pass by this rock.
Does anyone just like stand up there and preach, like do their church services there or something? Like,
well, the Greek Orthodox Church has a little chapel sort of behind, and they do once a year have a service that they hold there toward the end of June, if I remember right. And they commemorate that the Apostle Paul had been there on that step.
that's cool.
So I don't know.
I'd be getting involved
that kind of felt more authentic to me than like even visiting the ruins of Philippi. I mean, you can see where the jail was and that kind of thing, but I definitely felt that I definitely feel that there's just something more, I don't know, you're just like, wow, I'm standing on the very rock where the Apostle Paul preached to a group of people gathered around as he was passing on his way to Thessalonica.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. What did your time in Europe teach you about, I don't know, spiritually, I don't know, culturally, personally, about, as a pastor who rarely slows down?
Oh, I don't know. It's good to take some time with your family. That's probably the most important thing. We were basically there in Europe for like 2 weeks, and then we had a couple days of travel, and then we ended up going to Gainesville because my second daughter's about to become a Gator, and she had to go for her preview days. And it's good to just slow down sometimes and spend time with family. You can't. Well, a pastor could literally work around the clock.
Yeah.
But at some point or another, you have to just sort of accept your human limitations, and it's good to step back and take rest and all those kinds of things.
Anything, any reflections that make you think about the church differently back home? I know whenever I go away, I start thinking about, okay, it takes me out of all of this in Port St. Lucie, and I think about Sunlight.
I don't know if there was anything on our vacation or during our vacation that like wildly changed my thoughts about this or that. I probably, for the past number of years, I've really developed a lot of disciplines around public reading of scripture and praying psalms. And I'm probably just as devoted, if not more devoted, coming back from vacation about these, just I'll call them kind of personal spiritual disciplines. Yeah. So I'm not sure if, vacation, if anything, I just feel more resolve or more strength about those kinds of things.
That's good. That's probably what vacation should do, right?
Yeah.
Like refresh you, give you more resolve.
That's right.
Remove you from the context, like, oh yeah, this is why. Just solidify things. But before vacation, you had a trip with Saran and some other pastors from classes to Synod this year. Synod is a gathering of church leaders in our denomination, the Christian Reformed denomination, where there was like 200 people there.
Well, when you probably have the denominational staff included, that's probably true. I think we have to double check this. I think there's 47 classes, and a classis is like a regional area within our denomination. I think there's 47 different regions, classes, and every classis sends 4 delegates. So let's see, if we do the math, and I think that's 188 possible delegates, but sometimes classes might only wind up with 3 or something like that. So
Right.
the number of delegates is probably somewhere just a little south of 188.
This is a representative number for the churches in the Christian Reformed
Yeah, so
Church.
every area or every region, which is called the classis, sends 4 delegates. These would be leaders in your local region. And then, our denomination is binational, so this is Canada and the United States. And it just so happened that this time the Synod was in Canada.
Okay. Oh, Canada.
So in Ontario. And you gather for about a week and take up the business of the larger denomination.
There's a lot of topics that they could have talked about and did talk about. Saran was telling us about they had a thing about guns or the banner or all that kind of stuff, HSR, right? But what made Synod so particularly significant to you?
Well, I don't know. I mean, if I was to just talk about our denomination as a whole, I'd say that for the past number of years, the denomination has itself been focused on, for the most part, a single issue, which is human sexuality. Mm-hmm. And there's been controversy, particularly around how to understand homosexuality, homosexualism, the practice of homosexuality, how the church ought to respond to people who, are struggling with their sexuality. Mm-hmm. And it's just sort of become like one of these lightning rod issues. And so I would say that probably since 2016, it's been kind of like the focus,
right?
With almost like blinders on. Back in 2017, I authored an overture, and an overture basically is, a request to think about certain topics on, it gets formally on the agenda, and you have to process it first through your church, then through your classis, and then finally at Synod. And, hey, the denomination should do this or should think about that. That's the kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a request to do something, take action, or to think about an issue or whatever. And in 2017, because I was so involved in, at that time it was owned by Calvin Seminary, the Church Renewal Lab, I had gotten so involved in working with pastors who were working in church renewal situations. And then we ourselves at Sunlight had just, in the past couple of years at that time, taken over Lake Worth Christian Reformed Church, and that had become part of our ministry here. Mm-hmm. And it was, at one point, a large church that had just declined and completely failed. I was really kind of tuned into issues of decline and membership decline in our denomination. And so I wrote an overture, and the overture basically was like, hey, everybody, I know we're concentrating on a whole bunch of other things, but as far as I can tell, this is the number one issue. And if we don't pay attention to this, why bother paying attention to everything else?
Right. That was 8 years ago.
That was in 2017.
Yeah.
And, that overture went to Synod. I didn't go to Synod that year. The overture went without me, so to speak. Mm-hmm. I remember authoring this thing in like late January, early February, and then it went to our classis, and I don't even think I was at the classis meeting, if I remember right.
You just fired a shot in the dark.
The classis, the the classis dealt with it, and they passed it on to the Synod, and then Synod dealt with it. And I can remember later going, oh, yeah, what happened with that? And so I set it up there as the number one issue, but I wasn't so tuned in to Synod as much as maybe I might be now. And yeah, I think that overture had some effect, but I don't think people really knew what to do with it. And there was other things that were sort of like higher on everybody's mind in the agenda.
Hotter topics,
so to speak. And so it was kind of like I would say when people summarize what happened in Synod 2017, it's probably like a little minor footnote.
Right.
But in 2022, I decided to myself, I was like, oh, it's 5 years. I should give a update because not much happened with the overture the first time, and the situation's way worse than I predicted. So let me give a 5-year update. And it just so happened in 2022 when we wrote the second overture that this was after COVID, and so Synod hadn't met for a couple of years, and the agenda was bigger than normal. And our classes, the timing of its meeting, there was a whole bunch of procedural reasons why that overture didn't make it onto the agenda. So my 5-year update had to wait until 2023, and then finally it got on the agenda.
Well, before that, for like 6 years, I remember being part of these classes and meetings down here, and you had, I think, gotten a lot of people on board with a couple of visions, 20 churches by 2020.
Yeah, that goes all the way back to like 2009, 2010.
So you've been at this,
I've been at this stuff for a long time. Yeah.
And so when it pops up on the radar, it's like there's been a lot of thought and effort here. And then there's a movement of raising up leaders behind those churches because we need leaders to run the churches, right?
We do.
So there's a lot of track record that you have here.
This is why I think our classis winds up being particularly interested in this. So in the year 2009, I remember this pretty well, our classis kind of gathered itself together and took stock. And what was happening in our classis was that we had a bunch of what I'll call like the pillar or founder churches of our classis that started declining rapidly and started closing. And it was pretty obvious that all these pillar or founder churches were really struggling, and we had started to experience some closures of these churches, and our classis was experiencing significant membership decline, and we started saying to ourselves, man, we better pay attention to this, and we better come up with some kind of plan. So for the year 2009, actually our classis held a bunch of, we call them voluntary classis meetings. They weren't like, everyone wasn't required to go, but we just were bringing people to think through these issues of like, we basically realized, hey, in another 10 years, this classis won't even exist. There'll just be a couple of churches and they'll be folded into some of their classes because we won't have enough churches. So we better do something. And we worked on this for a whole year, and it was in the year 2010 that we finally adopted what became our classis strategy in the 20-teens. Yeah. Which was we decided that we were going to concentrate on church planting. We had a goal of planting 20 churches. But we said that isn't our main goal. Our main focus and main goal and the main strategy through which we'll finally plant churches is we're going to try to raise up leaders. And we made a goal that we were going to raise up 40 leaders in the next decade. And our definition was that they had to at least be licensed to preach, maybe they ordained as a commissioned pastor or even a minister of the word, but we had to raise them up locally, and we needed there to be at least 40 people who at the very least were licensed by our classes.
40 people in 10 years seems, is that crazy? Is that low?
Well, at the time, it was wild. Like no one, like that number sounded so impossible.
Yeah. Why does that number seem so low for me right now?
It is now. For our classes, it's really low. But at the time, if you go around our denomination, I think you'll find that maybe every classis licensed 1 or 2 people every decade.
What?
Yeah. That are licensed in our classis. Across the denomination.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I don't know the stats, but it's probably like that.
Wow. Wow, we do it like every.
Well, you know, Sunlight probably got this ball rolling a little bit because I had experienced as a part of my development that I talk about these two guys that poured into my life. One of them took me to Classes Columbia and got me licensed there.
Oh wow!
And I was young. I was probably like 21 at the time. And it was it wasn't like, oh, this happens every time at classes. It was probably a pretty unusual thing that I got licensed. But I remember that effort in leadership development that my mentor put in was like a key. It changed the course of my life.
How old were you?
So, what do you mean?
How old were you when you got licensed?
I think 21. Yeah, right about that.
I just remember that I didn't know this at the time, but you tell me the story when you had me licensed to preach, and you told me that there were people coming up to you and being like, Scott, what are you doing? What's this?
Well, the reason is because I think, if I remember right, the first person I took was Juan Sierra, and then I took you, and you might have been 20.
Yeah. Well, Juan was like
At
an
the
adult.
time.
Juan's a whole adult.
You were an adult at 20.
I mean, barely. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
same for me at 21, right? But I had this experience of people working with me and preparing me for licensure, and I took that experience and began to start working out on my own. And so first there was Juan, then there was you, then there was Jesus, and then, I think at some point there was a group of like 4 other people that I brought. And so Sunlight, probably by 2009, had probably licensed like 7 or 8 people already by then.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I think, it came down to this disciple making we were doing. We were making disciples here, and then there was this next stage of leadership that I was starting to work on with people.
Yeah.
And like I said, there was probably 7, 8, 9 people that by the time we started thinking about our future, Sunlight had started kind of paving a way. And I remember that, Felix Fernandez had started working with a couple people, and other people were seeing what I was doing here, and they were starting to kind of, we were already starting to informally doing it, but in 2009, 2010, we made it more formal.
Yeah.
Hey, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And to pick a number out like 40 at the time, to raise up 40 leaders across our classes sounded crazy. Anyway, all I can say is this. By 2020, we had exceeded our goal. And if you now look at our classes, it's so obvious that had we not done that, our prediction about us not existing would have been 100% true.
Oh, that's huge.
So for sure,
That is huge.
our classes would be nothing, and we'd not gone down this road.
I guess I never thought about that. Like,
So in hindsight, we see it.
If that never happened, if that plan or vision never happened, we would not exist as
We
a
would
class
not
today.
exist. And because we had this emphasis on raising up leaders
Dodged a
and then
bullet there.
planting churches. And anyway, by the time we started writing these overtures, you can do a study of like church membership across every single classes. The only classes that was not in decline is classes Southeast.
I heard about
US.
that. Yeah.
We're the only classes that not only is not in decline, but has been growing.
Well, a lot of that. I mean, I don't even know if Sunlight's the largest push of that now in this class. I think the Source Church is now.
No, they're full partners with us.
I mean,
sure.
not that they're not partners, but they are. Chris Cassis, that pastor.
Oh, I think a lot of
he's
our
pumping-
classes.
boy.
Yes,
He's
100%.
pumping the leaders out, man. Whenever he comes to classes, he brings a whole crew. So.
But now this is the thing with our classes. Because we've all experienced this over the course of more than a decade now, 15 years,
yeah,
I think we've just recognized, like, okay, we don't, as a denomination, have to fall apart here in the same kind of like, hey, let's gather ourselves up and take stock of reality and come up with a plan.
yeah. Sorry, I cut you off for 23, right? So
Yeah.
we got to 2023 when your overture was kicked over to the next year. What happened then?
Okay, so, yeah, I've learned a lot about Synod over the course of time. And one of the things, if you go to Synod, what you'll realize is that everything that's going to come up on the agenda for Synod, the way it gets processed is that there's a series of advisory committees that they kind of break Synod into, well, this year it was 7 groups. There were 7 advisory committees. So you take your 100 and however many people there are, 70 some people, and you divide them by 7. And so, yeah, there's going to be, nearly 20 some, nearly 30 people get together in a room. And in that room of almost 30 people, let's say, well, it's not quite 30, 20 some people, you're going to take the issues that are in front of Synod and you're going to talk them all over. What do you think about this? What about this? What about that? And then the role of the advisory committee is to tell Synod, hey, we've really talked this over already, and this is what we think the way forward is. And so the advisory committee makes a series of recommendations that Synod can take up or not take up. And sometimes these advisory committees, they can't get a consensus. And so what ends up happening is there's one group of people who thinks this and another group of people who think that. And so usually there's a majority and a minority, right? There more people think this and less people think that, but they can't see eye to eye. Well, as it turns out, when you get to Florida Synod, you have 2 groups that have thought about it, and oftentimes that's how people will break out in their thinking on the floor of Synod. So I think it's a pretty good process. If you have 170, 180 people, how are you going to get at this? Yeah. Instead of having all 180 people debate it, you break into smaller groups. And those smaller groups are representative of the whole group. And so whatever divisions there might be or whatever consensus you might find. Right. But what happens, that's a long explanation to just say this. What often happens is these committees kind of smooth out any rough edges, or they make everything just much more palatable, or, they try to, maybe a way of putting it is like placate all sides, because the goal is like, instead of having like majority and minority reports, and I mean, I've even seen a situation where you have like report A, B, and C, or stuff like this, like people really can't agree with each other. Instead of doing that, like, to build consensus, you sort of take the rough edges off. So in 2023, when we put up this overture about denominational decline, we basically were like, hey, we need to recognize this decline, and then as a denomination, we need to gather ourselves, and we need to produce a plan, and we need to start working this plan. And it basically required a report every single year to Synod about how our plan is going. And anyway, I would just say that the powers that be in kind of like denominational officials, the trouble with overtures like that is like, hey, I'm sure in their everyday life they have plenty to do and they're working as hard as they possibly can. And then someone comes in and like, we need to stop everything you're doing. We need to concentrate on this. Mm-hmm. It's like throwing a monkey wrench in. Right. And so let's just admit that, my overture was a lot like throwing a monkey wrench in. It creates chaos in the system. Hopefully good chaos, but chaos. And in that year, both Resonate, which is our mission agency, and Thrive, which is kind of like our broader church health agency, it has a lot of offices inside of Thrive. They both came out sort of like politically thankful for the overture and that we do need to pay attention to it, but let's not, let's not really accede to the overture. We're working on it, everything's okay here. Sure. And anyway, that's what happened in 2017. All the rough edges got smoothed out. And so the recommendations were basically like some flowery language that we can note in the minutes. Yeah. We recognize with that no real action steps. Okay. So having gone through that in 2017 and realizing like, the previous overture, which was super important, received virtually no action steps. So then in 2022 and 2023, I came to Synod and I knew everyone else was wanting to talk about human sexuality. I came there with like focus. I'm here to talk about this, and I'm gonna I'm not going to just sort of send an overture up and see what happens. I'm going to try to follow this thing through all the way to the end. And so that year in 2023, I went to the advisory committee ahead of time. You can go speak to the advisory committee. And yeah, I sort of challenged everyone. Look, everybody, like this issue is very important. And I gave the numbers and I showed like, man, this is what I said in 2017 and no one really listened. This is what I'm saying now. It's worse than what I thought it was going to be. And man, we can't just like take no action. We have to take some action. But in that year, also, the heads of these various different denominational agencies went to the committee. I think the committee kind of got caught between, here's, Class of Southeast U.S. and Scott saying one thing.
Monkey wrenches.
And here's, denominational officials saying another. And like, how do we balance this? And so the recommendations that came out, I'll just say, were a lot like 2017. Yeah. All the rough edges smoothed out, flowery language, no action steps.
We recognize that this is important.
So, yeah, I'm not getting into the finest detail, just the broad strokes of this thing. But in 2023, then, as we were working on all this, then I just decided to myself, like, all right, let me stand up and let me, try my best to help the entire Synod see this issue. Because what ends up happening is you go to your various advisory committees, you really are concentrating on what your advisory committees assign. You might not pay all that much attention to what these other issues actually are. So I just said to myself, I'm like, well, I at least need to raise this so that everybody knows. And in order to do that, I created this floor motion that had these action steps. And yeah, you can go back and people have actually... there's a hilarious, fantastic video that VanderKlay made. It's like Mr. Vander Ploeg goes to Washington.
Yep.
And he just chronicled what happened there because it probably in the history of Synod was a bit unusual to have someone do what I did and succeed.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Links in the description.
It's very
down below.
difficult. It's very difficult to go to Synod and create a floor motion and rally everyone to that flow motion and actually succeed.
Okay.
So that's what wound up happening. And if someone wants to go watch it, I think it's probably like an hour and a half, 2 hours long. But at least for me, I found the video like very well done.
He tells it in a gripping way.
Yeah,
too. He's very good.
He's good. He's good. So shout out to Paul, who probably what ended up happening is that his video made this moment at Synod more legendary than it otherwise would have been. Like, in other words, the moment stuck around. And I think probably became a turning point for our whole denomination because, first of all, what happened on the floor of Synod, which I was a part of, giving these speeches and, finally swaying the whole body and to come around and, but even more, his telling of what happened probably became really more legendary after the fact. So it
definitely helped you.
I think it had at least some small momentum that kind of gained some steam. But we're still, the major issue that year was human sexuality, and the Synod actually kind of ended in a chaotic way. And so this issue of human sexuality stayed on until at least 2024, and even in some small part this year, 2025. I didn't go to Synod in 2024, but what happened this year is, and this is all related to everything. Go back and read my original overture from 2017. I basically was like, man, every budget's going to shrink. Everything that we're doing is going to, be affected if we don't pay attention to this decline.
Yeah.
And what's happened over the course of time is that the budget of our missions agency has kept on shrinking as our denomination has shrunk to the point where they're having some pretty severe budgetary issues.
Well, we have the clip here, actually. Jake,
of what?
Well, I have it here titled as Scott's Bad News.
Oh, well, hold on. Don't do that one quite yet.
Okay.
Because we can do that in a second. Let me just explain it this way. So the decline has finally taken its effect. And what wound up happening is that Resonate, our mission agency, earlier in the year had to make, I think, what was for them a very painful announcement that the budgetary issues had become so severe that from here on out, they were no longer going to be able to provide any funding for church planting.
Yeah.
And that got presented to our classes this spring, that there would no longer be any funding denominationally for church planting. And it really struck our classes as, oh man, this is the wrong move. Keep in mind our classes history. Like, man, we got to come up with a plan to reverse this trend line of decline.
Right.
I can tell you something that's not part of the plan.
Right.
Let's stop funding church planting.
Right.
So it really struck us. And so we wrote an overture basically asking that the General Secretary and Resonate would work to reprioritize church planting in our denominational budget. But again, when that went to the advisory committee, this time Felix was the one appointed from our classes. Hey, you go talk to the advisory committee. He went and he laid it all out. But when the recommendations came through the advisory committee, I mean, we should probably have them here word for word so that we know exactly. And maybe if someone you got the clips, maybe it's there. Yeah. But the first motion was something like, thank Class of Southeast for their zeal for church planting.
Yeah.
And so that's when I stood up and gave this first speech.
Okay, yeah, let's clear that, and let's play this clip here.
Vander Ploeg, Class of Southeast. I'm standing to speak in favor of recommendation number 1. Tongue-in-cheek, first of all, I always love when Synod commends our classes. Thank you very much. But maybe more importantly, I want to just speak in favor of supporting Resonate. I think because of the decrease in funding, they're struggling to figure out how to make budget adjustments that's going to work toward church planting. And I know they're working as hard as possible to make churches and church plants flourish. So I just want to make sure that we understand. The director just spoke about how hard the last 6 months have been for them, and I think it's important for us to really hear that. Though I'm speaking in favor, I have a little bit of a concern. And my concern is that with regard to this overture, we're going to say some great words together, but we won't have tangible action steps. If you'll permit me with some numbers, I was a math major in college. It was in 2017 that Class of Southeast first presented an overture about denominational decline. We had been tracking the previous 2 decades. From 1996 to 2006, our denomination had declined in membership by just less than 7%, from 292,000 to 272,000. But the decade leading up to 2017, from 2006 to 2016, we doubled our rate of decline to 13.3%, and we fell to 236,000. When we submitted this overture in 2017, we had a warning that, boy, if we just keep on this pace, we could fall as low as 207,000 by 2026 and 184,000 by 2036. And our overture contained the following words: if these projections prove to be anywhere near accurate, it is certain that this decline will have a profound impact on the entire denomination and all its ministries. It's difficult to see how, if nothing changes, the CRC's kingdom impact will not be severely reduced. It's now 2025, and it's publicly available information on our CRCNA website that we have fallen below our projection for 2036 already. Our membership now stands at 183,710 members. So in less than a decade, we fell lower than our 2-decade projection at the time. Underneath that, if you go back just a little more than a decade, you'll find that we have about 1,000 churches in our denomination. We're averaging about 3 new members by evangelism per church per year. But in the past 4 years, we're averaging just less than 1. So this decline is going to continue. The budget cuts are going to continue. And at least for me, I was inspired by the story of Reverend Brink, who, with financial support from Oakdale Park, came knocking on doors, and look at all that's happened. Yeah. And I think we need some action steps to make sure that there'll continue to be financial support. People keep knocking on doors. Thank you.
One person growth a year?
Yeah.
I mean, on average, right?
On average, our churches are averaging just a little less than 1 person reached per year for evangelism.
That's insane. That is insane.
And like I said, you go back a little more than a decade ago, we were at 3, and we would have thought, 3?
3 is crazy too. 3 is like, oh, come on, what are you doing? 3 is crazy. So after this, I watched the whole thing a couple times over. It's all online. Links are in the description. Probably something like 30 people went up and started talking.
Yeah.
Of that, Saron Brown, one of us.
Well, we had
Felix,
agreed as a
John.
classes that everyone from our classes was going to get in the speaker queue.
Gotcha. But I mean, it wasn't just. It was a ton of people.
A lot of people. still
And
speak.
there was it was just on that first point, right? We commend Classes Southeast, and the other point was that we think that this we want to commend Resonate.
Yeah,
and
they're
this
doing
is-
the best they can.
They're doing the best they can, and you shared sobering statistics about our decline as a church. Why do you feel like people were so compelled to say something? So many people were compelled to say something.
Well, I think that, though at our formal gatherings called Synod, the energy was being poured mostly into a single issue, that there is a ton of passion in our denomination behind these topics that I'm raising. Nobody wants to, just see our decline continue on and on and on. Everybody wants our denomination to have a vital mission and kingdom impact. I think, everybody wants their church to play a role. Nobody wants to just show up to a dying church and just slowly wait for it to die. So I think there's actually quite a bit of passion in our denomination about this. But it's just been difficult to get airtime.
It was crowded out.
Yeah, there's a conversation that people are having, and you're like butting in, like, "Hey, let's talk about this instead." And they're like, "Shh, we're busy talking about this."
Yeah.
And so I think, I don't know, it just, there is quite a bit of passion already, and I think that, sometimes there just needs to be somebody who is willing to get up and kind of advocate for issues that no one else is talking about. And I think we in Classes Southeast, and I'll just even say myself in particular, have been trying to be that voice, and we've been willing to stand on our head and maybe even sort of do uncomfortable things to try to start getting attention. What wound up happening is, as you mentioned, the number of speeches, the kind of outcry that there was, the passion that was behind
The stories.
it. I think what
experiences.
happened is that, collectively, the entire room started to realize, including all the denominational officials, man, this is important. And we can't just have this flowery language.
Yeah.
And so I had come up with a floor motion again that I was wanting to present.
Yeah, we'll get there.
But unlike 2 years prior in 2023, when I just decided to kind of spring it on people, the element of surprise, I decided, I'm going to try to do this in more of a, upfront, pleasing way, like a good way. Not that my previous way was a bad way, but just, when the initial report from the advisory committee came out and I read it and I was like, okay, this is all language, but there's no action steps. Then I sat down at my table and I started writing out, all right, this is what I think we can do. And I passed it around. I had everyone at our table read it from Classes Southeast. And then I went up and I went to the president, Stephen Terpstra, and I said, hey, when we talk about this, I want to submit this floor motion. And so they knew for a couple days that this floor motion was coming. There was a bunch of procedural things that were happening in the background. And I think, my own vantage point is that, if you want to be a change agent the way that I was trying to be a change agent, or you want to try to get things going that are a little out of the box, you got to sort of fight some systemic inertia.
Yeah.
And the way Synod runs, it runs with these advisory committees, and basically what they normally do, that's how things sort of prevail. And
Right.
I kind of knew ahead of time. So I wanted to kind of prep everyone, and there was some wrangling back and forth about how I could present this motion, or even whether I should or how I should maybe modify the language a little this way or that way, and who I needed to run this past, and all these kinds of things that, there was all fine. But finally, once we got this discussion going and there was a recognition about how much passion and energy there was, I think my viewpoint was, whereas my floor motion was maybe seen as something that was going to be a little inconvenient or how's this going to go, I think everyone realized we really need that floor motion.
People started clamoring for it.
They were kind of like, we need something.
Yeah.
So actually in the middle of the discussion, we broke for dinner, and it was almost like, Scott, help us.
Well, we got a couple clips here for
okay.
it. So I'm going to play a clip for Resonate responding to the groundswell.
Okay.
And that's Kevin, and then your good news, and then the floor motion.
Okay.
So let's play that clip first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I suspect that Synod doesn't want to go
This is the leader
into
of
all of
Resonate.
our thinking around how we made these budget adjustments, but maybe it's helpful to know that this is the direction that we've gone in, and kind of the reasoning behind it, so where we're at with this. So we have not defunded church planting. We continue to support church planting in partnership, and those partnerships have always been there. The emphases around who plays what role in those partnerships will need to shift. And so Resonate will continue to provide supports for church planters, and will continue to work with classes and parent churches in terms of identifying where church plants need to happen, helping raise up church planters, and all of that work. The vision and funding will need to be owned at a greater rate than what was before in terms of at the local level. That hasn't changed, but we just need a greater partnership with you as churches and classes in terms of funding the church plants. And we can work and connect with classes in terms of how that can happen. We can provide fundraising resources for church planters as they're working on that, and we can continue to support that. So it's just a matter of shifting the emphasis. And the reason that we've come to this place is not because of any other outside voices, even within the denominational system. This is really us responding to the financial realities which really have come to us in terms of decisions that churches have made around ministry shares and so on. So just to be clear on a couple of pieces around this.
Yeah, I want to emphasize what you said clearly was that, something that I've learned and was super important is the support for church planners. Super needed. That's and so they see it as like, okay, this is still funding church planting. We're just doing it at this level. And then the local church level, we want them to own a greater, maybe total funding for the church planter directly. But as you said, the reduction of budget is because of the decline in the denomination. So we're killing off our ability to turn that around, and it's just going to continue and perpetuate this decline and the cutting of budgets over and over and over again.
Yeah, and I feel for Kevin in this situation, Kevin Duraff, who's the director of Resonate, because I'm sure coming to these decisions was not easy.
Right.
Hey, look, this is the reality of how much budget we're going to wind up having as a result of the decrease that's happened kind of denominationally. And he had to make decisions and then was in the position of, clearly it's not a popular decision, but he had to make it, and then he had to be in the position of delivering the bad news and then defending.
Right.
What else could we do? And I
spot.
kind of agree. What else could he do given the situation?
Yeah.
And what my overture ended up being was asking the General Secretary to work with Resonate and particularly all the classes to come up with some kind of plan and figure out how we're going to do funding in the future.
Well, let's go ahead and play Scott's good news and then the Scott's motion from the floor.
Yeah, and let me say something about this too, because it was important to me to not just come and say, man, we stink.
No, that's why.
And I didn't want to leave it with that kind of this decision's horrible, the sky's falling, we stink.
Right.
I really wanted to say, hey, it motivates me. We can do this. We've lived through it in our classes to some certain extent. We've faced issues like this in the past. I don't really believe we lack anything.
Right.
We need to gather ourselves up and kind of make a plan.
Yeah.
And anyway, I didn't want to leave on like, the sky's falling, our backs are up against the wall, and so let's make a decision that, we got to grit our teeth and just make one. I wanted to sort of like rally everybody. I feel that that's very important.
Absolutely.
So,
let's go
okay.
ahead and play Scott's
No,
Good
I
News.
can't remember what I said.
Well, yeah,
It was probably something like that.
you kind of stole your own thunder here, so let's
Yeah.
go ahead and play that.
Okay.
Scott Vander Ploeg, Andrew Littleton, Scott Algersma.
Scott Vander Ploeg, class of Southeast U.S. I'd like to stand to speak in favor of this motion. Previously, I gave the bad news about our decline, and I did so because I believe we have to act with urgency. I'd like to stand up and speak toward the good news. And I will say, it's been referenced several times by the president, that I do intend to provide a floor motion to get to some more concrete action steps. And I'd like to do that after we vote in favor of this motion. Here's what I'd like to say. As the Christian Reformed Church, when it comes to church planting, we don't lack anything. We can do it. And I know. I've been a pastor now 21 years in the place that has been named by various people as the most unchurched area of the United States. And we have thriving ministry. We have the gospel, which the book of Romans says is the power of God for salvation. And the Christian Reformed Church, I believe, has a robust articulation of faith that our secular world needs, filled with theological depth. We're well positioned, and we're ready to take on the rising tide of secularism. Our agencies are fantastic. Our denomination has a kind of sophistication, and we're ready. We have a tremendous history of leadership development that we can build on. I don't want anyone, because of what I said earlier, to despair that, this isn't something we can do. We can do it. We do need a plan, and we need some action steps. Of course, denominational decline will be a motivator. I think it should be. But I hope that we're motivated for church planting more than just survival. I love the gospel. I was a broken person, riddled with sin, living in rebellion to God, and there were CRC pastors and people that came into my life to share the good news of Jesus. I'm just captivated by his life, his death, his resurrection. By grace, I was reborn, I was made alive, I was forgiven, I was set free, I was given a place in his church, and I'm motivated by a world around me that's lost, broken, hurting, and I believe that the church is the hope of the dying world. So that's our second motivation, the gospel. But even more than that, I think we should be captivated by our beholding the glory of the resurrected Jesus. Think of who he is. Think of the power he has. Think of what he can do through us. I think most of us are familiar with praying the Lord's Prayer.
I got timed out. I remember that.
Thank you.
Am I done?
So
Okay.
I want to let you finish your thought there. What were you going to say when you got timed out there?
I was going to say that when God teaches us to pray, there are some requests that should be our first requests. Hallowed be your name, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And if I think about those, we have a desire that God's name would be recognized for how special it is. And our world is filled with people who treat God as some common, ordinary, everyday, profane thing. And we're praying that God would do something to make his name holy, special, recognized, extraordinary. Your kingdom come. If we pray that prayer, we must realize that, there are places and lots of places where no one has bowed their knee to Jesus Christ, where people are living in open rebellion, and we want Jesus to do something about it. And these are the prayers that should be at the top of our mind, this sort of like God's kingdom entering into our broken world, turning things around, changing things, his will being done. And what I was going to say is this should be our motivation. If we've been taught to pray this, there should be no one who says to themselves, man, I don't want to plant churches. I don't want to reach people for Christ. These are the first things we should be praying before we ever get around to give us today our daily bread.
Right.
So I was going to say that, but I got timed out. But it was fine.
So
it was interesting because, that's the first time I listened to my speech again. And behind the scenes, I sketched out my speeches the day I wrote the floor motion in the advisory committee. So I was holding on to those speeches for a couple days. I had sketched out, all right, here's my strategy. Here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to give this bad news one, then I'm going to sit down and let it happen. And then eventually, I'm going to give this good news one, and then I'm going to give my floor motion. So
Right.
It's funny because behind the scenes, I think this happened on Wednesday. I think by Monday, I had more or less sketched out my ideas for these speeches and the floor motion. So that's the behind the scenes. But now that I listen back, I'm like, oh, okay, that was pretty good.
That's pretty good. Actually, so good. There was a video by Paul VanderKlay who made How to Win at Synod. So if anyone wants to win at Synod, go ahead and check out that video too.
Okay.
I do want to bring up a few things.
But
here.
I'll say something about it, which
Yeah.
is I had a couple people who, they're, like not everybody's opinion is going to matter to you, but, some trusted people who you think, man. And one of them came up and said, that speech that you just gave is the speech I've been dying to hear at Synod for like 25 years.
Yeah.
And so I think actually it struck a chord. That's what I wanted to say.
I agree. And I want to outline what struck a chord in me for that. You mentioned three motivating motivations. Our decline, one, the gospel, which is the second one, and the power of Jesus to work through us.
That's right.
I think you also mentioned a few things that I would rehearse as the CRC's resume. This is, we're ready. Our infrastructure is great. Our history of leadership development, our articulation of faith, that's the resume that we have. And then this is what the secular world needs.
Yep.
It's like we have everything in place. We have the power of Jesus. We have the gospel message that we need. We have the motivating decline it's just the current reality. And I think if you take all of that together, why is that so important? Our identity, our resume, the gospel, why is that so important when we face a problem here? What is the danger of us not having that identity and then trying to tackle that problem of church decline or the decline in denominational churches like kind of dying out? Why is the articulation of the gospel identity so important to a pastor and the Christians in the church?
Well, yeah, at least this was my thought process. The first motivator being just the urgency of our decline. We got to do something. Which, by the way, I think actually God brings into our lives obstacles, difficulties, suffering. Most of the time when these things happen, and by the way, it happens to everybody's life. Their life is full of problems. We don't really welcome problems. We generally think to ourselves, man, I want to avoid problems. But if you have a gospel identity, you realize that God can work through suffering and problems, that some of his most powerful actions, just think about Jesus dying on the cross, leading to the resurrection.
Right. The big problem.
So I think what ends up happening is really having a gospel identity transforms the way in which you deal with your problems. Problems are going to come. So as a group, as a denomination, we've got these problems. We could just say, oh, these are all unwelcome. Let's not even think about them. Let's bear our head. But I think actually what ends up happening is you face those various different problems and obstacles. You face a choice. You can decide to go into a cycle of denial and blame and complaining, right? You can say, this isn't really happening, and it's somebody else's fault, and I'm not responsible, and it's because they're doing this, or you can just complain, or you can say to yourself, no, I've got the power of Jesus working in me, and it'd be easy to say, oh, this isn't my problem. Let it be somebody else's problem. But finally, having a gospel identity lets you realize that, okay, Jesus could have easily seen the problems of the world and going, you know what? not my problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, he actually took our problems on himself.
Right.
And so I think having a gospel identity allows you to sort of not only receive problems, suffering, difficulties in a way that, you know, like, you know what? God's in charge. And if he led me down this path, he has his reasons. And this suffering will probably lead to glory because of I'm attached to Christ through his death and resurrection. Yeah. Then you can become eager to, instead of turning away from your problems, you can have love and decide, hey, I'm going to take up this responsibility. You can have hope because you believe that God can change things. His gospel is very powerful.
You have resolve.
You could have resolve. You could have faith. I mean, you can actually go, okay, well, you know, as best as I possibly can, let me take these problems up and become responsible for them, knowing that ultimately, you know, I'm going to just be relying on God's power. And then as you begin to see God at work and responding to these difficulties, and you begin to see the resurrecting hope on the other side of the suffering, that sort of reinforces your gospel identity. You're like, oh, God can do things.
Right, right.
And I guess that's part of my overall hope as I even give a speech like this is like, oh, I saw it in our classes. I've seen it in our church.
Yeah.
I've seen it in my personal life.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what I think about with regard to gospel identity.
It seems as though Synod needed to be reminded. I mean, amidst all the bad news, and at least in that moment, the reaction of that gentleman you just said,
Yeah.
it's like, I needed to hear that for 20 years.
That's
and
right.
It seems like we forget. I mean, I know I forget, and we often need that reminder,
Yeah.
especially as a group and Synod and pastors.
This is what I love about the Bible. The Bible is a book of good news.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a preacher of the Bible, you're a preacher of the gospel, then
It's good news.
you should be giving people the good news all the time.
Right.
And people are dying for some encouragement. They're dying for some hope.
Yeah.
And we have every reason to hope. Remember?
Yeah.
Jesus is in charge.
Yeah. Remember, we got the power here. We got the power of Jesus.
I mean, it's interesting. And I think, that kind of informs my overall approach to leadership and ministry, which is why 2 days before any of this happened, I sat down. I'm like, okay. I actually tell the gospel message all the time. I start with the bad news, and then I tell the good news, and then the life that can result. There's a future hope of all that.
That's right.
And it's like if you got your life shaped by the gospel, I mean, in a way, I sort of just see this as my calling is like, how do I provide some encouragement? How do I be for somebody else? How do I, and I believe it. I mean, I didn't say anything I don't believe. It wasn't like I was blowing smoke at anybody.
No.
I really, truly believe that the gospel articulation, the kind of theological depth that we have, the richness of our history really has us set up well to face the problems in the world right now.
But the pastors need to re-articulate that to themselves. They have to believe it themselves, that this is not some
So we can't get
impossible
into
task.
blame and denial and
yeah.
complaining.
Right.
That's easy for us to do.
Right.
We need to get into encouragement and action and hope.
After we've adopted that identity for ourselves, the next launch point there is action. It's a plan.
That's right.
You bring up a motion from the floor, which I want to play. This has never been
Okay.
played on the podcast yet, so let's go ahead and hear it. It's about 2 minutes long.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. Scott Vander Ploeg, class of Southeast U.S. And I would like to introduce a motion from the floor. And I'll just say a few things as sort of my preamble, which is this is a difficult situation, so I don't pretend to have all the answers. I don't know that any one of us does. Also, I do feel, as I think now that's been expressed, we need to have some more concrete action. And I want to make sure to just say this, that although my floor motion is going to direct the General Secretary and agencies to do something, that I think, our General Secretary can't just wish it and say it so. Actually, all of us as churches, as classes, will have to step up to the plate, so to speak. Okay, here's my floor motion. Instruct the Office of General Secretary to coordinate with agencies and the classes to develop a vision, plan, strategy, and financial proposal for church planting for the CRCNA for the next decade. This plan should specify the number of church plants we aspire to plant, the strategy necessary to raise up leaders for this movement, and the resources necessary to carry out this plan, specifically financial, but also otherwise. This plan should contemplate and propose how we as a denomination will secure the resources necessary to carry out this plan. The General Secretary shall publish and set this plan before the churches by next year's Synod, and I included some grounds. 1, church planting is an important aspect of fulfilling the Great Commission, and therefore is vital to the mission of our denomination. 2, this is a necessary part of developing our church renewal strategy. 3, other denominations regularly develop such plans in order to inspire and challenge their respective churches. So moved.
I hear some support.
Okay.
Okay. Do you want to have any comments at all from the committee?
Okay, so
That was actually a funny moment because, you know, like there was a lot of people who shouted out support, and everyone started laughing about it because,
so everyone's so gripped.
yeah, everyone was really gripped by it. I mean, it was a moment. I won't. I mean, as I think about it, it really was kind of a moment. I think, and I'm hoping, I personally am hoping that what wound up happening as we voted for that, and by the way, it passed unanimously, is that
Which is huge.
That's huge. It winds up being a turning point. Yeah, in 2023, when I did my church renewal overture, and it passed, but there were quite a bunch of people who were voting against it for a variety of reasons, which is fine. This one, now the entire Synod was like 100% unanimous. We're all moving in the same direction, and
How often does that happen, by the way?
well, I don't know. You'll have to ask some church historian.
Okay.
I think now I've been to Synod, I don't know, 7, 8 times.
Okay. In 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That was a pretty remarkable moment.
Awesome.
In my moment.
God does it work.
It was remarkable in 2023 also. I mean, I left that night really smiling, like, wow, I think God's really at work in this.
Good.
And now I left that evening really smiling as well. I felt that it kind of became like a rallying cry and something that everyone could get behind. I'm hoping that we've had this long conversation about human sexuality, which I think now is, for the most part, resolved. Maybe there's a few minor issues, but I think for the most part, that's resolved. It's in our history. It's decided. There's been some people who haven't liked it and have wound up leaving. There's been other people who really like it. It's just been a major focus.
Only took 8 years.
It took a long time. And I'm just hoping that now this can become the major focus, and that this, I'll just start with this gospel identity, that this gospel identity really start to take root in us, and that we'll really take stock of the moment that we're in. And yeah, there may be some urgency as a result of the obstacles God's bringing, but recognize God's in charge. He's bringing these obstacles for a reason, and okay, let's go. And I'm hoping that that'll happen.
You said we need a plan. What does this plan look like? How do you envision this thing working itself out? You probably don't have all the details, or you admitted you don't have all the answers. But what did you have in mind as far as a plan? You mentioned specifically number of churches, strategy of leadership development, and the financial strategy behind all of this. Just give me a broad strokes about what did you envision as far as like actual, plans in place here. What do you have in mind?
Well, the first is the most obvious, that we need a plan.
Yeah.
That we got to come up with some strategy.
Mm-hmm.
I think my current thinking about this, in 2017 when I wrote this overture, I didn't even go to Synod, and I was invested, but I wasn't that invested. And it's sort of like, well, let me lob this up there and see what happens. More than that, but to some certain extent, I was thinking, yeah, I'm going to put this out there, and then hopefully other people will do something about this, okay? In 2023, when I came back again, I think I had a little bit more resolve. I'm not just going to lob this up there and see what happens. I'm going to follow through and play more of a leadership role to whatever extent God will allow me to. And but even then, I think I was a little more hesitant about trying, I basically, that overture in 2023 asked the General Secretary to come up with a plan to reverse the trend line of decline. And I think the General Secretary has been working on that, but I've been a little more content to just say, okay, I got this thing going, and then I'll be super supportive of what happens, but let's just see how this thing plays out. I think I leave this year's synod feeling a little more responsible. All right, for some number of years now, I've championed this movement and maybe even become something of a face for it. So I'm just thinking to myself, I probably can't just leave synod and sit back and, next year go to synod and figure out what they do. I think it's obvious to me that all the churches in the denomination are the ones that are going to have to really step up to the plate. And I want to help in that process. So I'm really thinking about how do I really get more involved in trying to, not just talk about the fact that we can do something, but actually start to help people taking action steps to do it. So I guess my own thinking has been man, you can't stand up on the floor of synod and talk about how I don't just want flowery language, I want action.
Yeah.
And then step back and be well, I wonder what their action's going to be. My flowery language was pretty good.
Yep.
So, I am actively thinking about ways. And not only that, I think that the experience that we've had in our classes, it's not hey, everybody out there, try to think of some plan from zero.
Right.
No, actually, we've had an experience here that could at least be a helpful guide, I think. And so, whereas in the past I've been very hesitant to do any more than say, come up with a plan, and then people are like, what kind of plan? I'm like, I didn't want to insert myself into that, what is the plan conversation, I'm a know-it-all or I have all the answers. I've been very hesitant about that because I just don't think that way. And you know this about me, that I'm hesitant to some certain extent to be a front person or a face.
To dictate the direction.
Even when
and
it comes to
pace
this
and,
podcast, you kind of have to beg me to do it.
Yep.
I hesitate to become the lead face in some regard, even here in my church setting.
Yeah.
I love the idea of encouraging others, working with others, working as a team, not trying to be the guy in the spotlight all the time. I don't know.
I get it.
This is a funny thing about me, but when it comes to photographs of what's happening here at church, I'm always telling our photographers take somebody else's picture.
Yep.
So I think the same thing here. I've been hesitant, but now I feel a responsibility. Mm-hmm. And so I am thinking about trying to play some larger role in trying to move this thing along.
Give me a ballpark of what you're thinking, though. How many
Well,
churches? CRC, how many churches can we plant in 10 years?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have the number, but I think that this same strategy, here at Sunlight, we use this language: multiply disciples, multiply leaders, multiply churches.
That's right.
So disciple making has really been our first big move. And I believe that, we've been working on this now for 21 years. I think this is the right formula. And so, whereas in the past I've been hesitant to offer it, now I'm going to be a little bit more forthright about, this is the plan, I think.
Yeah.
First off, we got to just really get a disciple-making movement going in our denomination like never before. And by the way, I think our denomination is well poised for a disciple-making movement like I'm thinking of. Mm-hmm. But then second, we need to work on leadership development. If our classes thought about 40 people in a decade, and that was wild to us at the time, I think we could take 47 classes and say, hey, everybody try to do 40. Maybe something like that. So maybe we're trying to raise up 1,600 to 2,000 leaders in the next decade.
Yeah.
which to me seems really appropriate. There's 1,000 churches, so seems very doable. And I think it's a game changer
That'll
because
be huge.
there's a lot of churches out there that think, what can I do to get involved in church planting? We lack resources. We're a small church. What are we actually going to do? And what you're actually going to do
Produce
is,
a leader.
in your small little church, there may be the next massive leader. And so what's going to happen is the leaders of this church are going to take stock of, oh, we got this 16-year-old, in our church who has tremendous potential, and I'm going to personally invest in this person and disciple them, and then I'm going to get them involved in leadership training. And by the time they're 20 years old, I'm going to take them to classes. I'm going to get them licensed, which is like what I did with you.
Yep.
And who knows what can happen? They might become one of the next major leaders. Like, okay, that small church might not itself plant a church, but this is how everybody can be supporting church planting, as we're raising up leaders. So we're multiplying disciples. Out of these disciple-making disciples, we're finding leaders. We're investing in those leaders. And then once we have that base of leaders, we're going to put together plans to get churches. And there's going to be lots of different plans because it's going to happen lots of different ways. And anyway, I think that's something that our church, our classis, has to offer as the broad outlines of what we're going to do. The plans are going to be way more sophisticated than that, but I like to start at the high level, and I think that's it.
Yeah, and that plan will contextualize based on classes for
Absolutely.
sure. What the funding looks like, who's available, what churches are around, all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. That needs to be more contextual.
That's right.
But at the highest level, I think you're right. I'm bought into it. We're bought into it here at Sunlight. Just multiply disciples, multiply leaders, which multiply churches. Seems like a simple enough plan for everyone to get on board with.
So there you go.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you guys want to know more about this, we were running out on time. This is one of the longest podcasts that we've done, actually, probably the longest. But I thought it was really important because I think you said it, we're at a moment right now where
I think so.
This is it. This is like a turning point. This is something that we need to sense of what God is creating, this wave that we need to surf, as it were. And please be in prayer of all these things and more. If you guys want to be more involved, links are in the description. You can be involved in like some more things that we're thinking through. And thanks for watching. Share this video, and we'll see you in the next video.